So Deontay Wilder's back. He defeated Gerald Washington by knockout. A lot of fans around the world talking about the big fights for Deontay Wilder. They're talking about unification matchups. They're talking about Vladimir Klitschko. They're talking about Anthony Joshua. They're talking about Joseph Parker, Hughie Fury. Who's he going to fight next? It's the rematch that literally no one wanted to see. Deontay Wilder versus Bermaine Stiverne. One of the most pointless rematches you'll ever see. In the first fight, it wasn't competitive, let's have it right. Deontay Wilder, he probably won pretty much every single round of the fight. Bermaine Stiverne came up with the bizarre excuse of dehydration. Now, had Bermaine Stiverne been any other weight than heavyweight, I may have had some sympathy for his plight. But a heavyweight who gets dehydrated on the run-up to a heavyweight fight suggests a bizarre preparation for a heavyweight title fight. You know, very, very strange excuse that for me. Anyway, you know, Wilder versus Stiverne is back on. And really, it's a disappointing matchup. You know, Stiverne, I appreciate he was WBC champ before Wilder. You know, I appreciate that he won, I think it was a vacant title against Chris Arreola after Vitaly Klitschko retired. But let's have it right. Wilder handled him with consummate ease. And if we look at Stiverne's resume, who's actually the best person Stiverne's ever beaten? It's probably Chris Arreola. And I know he's beaten Chris Arreola twice, but once you get beyond Arreola, who's the second, third, fourth, fifth best people that Stiverne's beaten, you know, it's actually really, really scant when you look at his ledger, who he's actually gone out and beaten. You know, what's disappointing is Stiverne, he's not a young heavyweight. Since that fight with Wilder, he's been massively inactive. Massively inactive. The only time he was in the ring since, he laboured to a close points win against journeyman heavyweight Derek Rossi, who I believe, dropped him and had him almost unconscious in that fight. So for Bermaine Stiverne, he's fighting Father Time. He's fighting inactivity. You wonder whether that absolute beatdown he took at the hands of Deontay Wilder has knocked some of his punch resistance and durability out of him. You know, is he a shot fighter if he's getting dropped by Derek Rossi and just about labouring to a points win? I've always wondered with Stiverne, you know, he's never seemed to be the most professional in terms of his training. He often appears overweight. He often appears too laid back. Possibly, you know, that ties in with the fact he was dehydrated for a heavyweight fight, which is frankly ludicrous. But, you know, this really is the rematch no one wanted to see. And, you know, all the talent you've got in the heavyweight division right now, all of the young up-and-coming fighters. I mean, I'm not saying someone like Jarrell Miller is a great talent by any stretch of the imagination, but, you know, how many of us would rather see Bermaine Stiverne over Jarrell Miller? How many of us would rather see Bermaine Stiverne over the Hughie Fury Joseph Parker winner? You know, I could pick out other names. Kubrat Pulev I'd rather see. You know, I'd even rather see guys like, obviously the big names, the Luis Ortizes of this world, the Anthony Joshuas of this world, but there's so many names I could pick, and it's a bizarre, bizarre fight, this. You know, Stiverne has a relatively weak resume at the best of times, and he's been inactive. He's not fought since. You know, you'd at least think. No, I think the only saving grace in Stiverne's defence is, to be fair to him, he was due to fight Alexander Povetkin. Povetkin is one of the top heavyweights in world boxing. He was going to travel to Povetkin's backyard. He showed up to take the fight. He was fighting for the WBC final eliminator spot. And Povetkin, as we know now, failed the drug test. So, you know, that isn't Stiverne's fault. And given the circumstances, I guess the WBC are right to keep him in the mix. You know, he should not be penalised for Povetkin failing that test. Having said that, if I was the WBC, rather than simply installing him as the mandatory, I'd have made him fight a final eliminator against the next available contender, whoever that is. You know, I'd just be mindful that since he's lost to Wilder, the best win, the only fight he's had was Derek Rossi, and I think before installing him automatically as a mandatory, surely you make him fight someone, some sort of eliminator, because, But anyway, Wilder Stiverne, for me, it wasn't a controversial fight. It wasn't a close fight. It was a clear win from Deontay Wilder. I actually think in certain ways Deontay Wilder's improved since that fight, and I've got many reasons to believe Bermaine Stiverne's got worse. Age, weight, inactivity, discipline. Lots of reasons why Bermaine Stiverne could potentially be a lesser fighter than when he actually stepped into that ring first time against Deontay Wilder. And I now wonder, those punches that Deontay Wilder landed on Bermaine Stiverne in their initial fight, will that be knocking Bermaine Stiverne out in this second fight, in this rematch? Will an aging Stiverne, will he be able to take those same punches that he took in the first fight? I don't know. Stiverne's got attributes. Stiverne isn't a terrible fighter. He's borderline top 10, borderline. He has a decent boxing brain in certain ways. He's a counter puncher. There are elements of his game that you could say constitute being a slick boxer. He sometimes exhibits what you would call good timing and good punch selection. But the problem with Stiverne has been that he's painfully slow. And he really is painfully slow. I mean, he's not David Price slow or Tony Thompson slow, but really, in the context of the heavyweight top 10, he's very, very slow. Look, Wilder is a far faster, snappier, more athletic individual. And when the better athlete, and it's a considerable athletic gap, when the better athlete is also far bigger, far longer, far rangier, it's a very, very dangerous combination. Does Stiverne maintain a puncher's chance? Probably. He'll probably be 18 or 19 stone. He's exhibited relatively decent punching power in the Areola fights in the past. If Wilder swings in recklessly, can he catch Wilder? Maybe. It's not something you'd rule out. Wilder's an upset waiting to happen, in my opinion. But Wilder showed he had the key to him last time, and it was actually the best Wilder I've seen. Stylistically, Stiverne matched up very nicely to Wilder first time. Wilder and his corner came out with very good tactics for that fight. They boxed, they used length, they used the ring, they used the whole size of the ring and boxed rings around Stiverne really and kept him off and fought him long. And Bermaine Stiverne, with his slow footwork and slow foot speed and real lack of athleticism and mobility, was a sitting duck for a mobile, athletic, younger, longer heavyweight in Deontay Wilder. And Stiverne really took a hiding that night. He took an absolute beatdown, and it would almost be more of a surprise if he was the same fighter after that beatdown than if Wilder had not taken anything out of him. So yeah, not overly impressed by this fight. You've got to say, Wilder's resume, is he 37-0, 38-0? He's never beaten a top 5 heavyweight. I think Stiverne is the only guy you could say is a top 10 heavyweight on his resume. Guys like Spilker, DePar, maybe Gerald Washington. I think you could certainly make cases those are top 20 guys. But realistically, for my money, Wilder has a substantially inferior resume to the likes of Luis Ortiz. He's got an inferior resume to the likes of Alexander Povetkin. I think you could construct an argument that his resume is no better than like a Kubrat Pulev. I'd say he's probably got a worse resume than Joseph Parker. I'd say Parker has a marginally better resume than Wilder. Anthony Joshua would probably have slightly behind Wilder in terms of resume, but Joshua's obviously fighting Vladimir Klitschko, which is by far a bigger fight, so I think you give Joshua a buy on that given how big his very, very next fight is. But yeah, Deontay Wilder, he's 30 years old, He's an experienced guy. He's been on the scene for a while. I think he's 38-0. You know, when are we going to see him in a competitive fight? Let me know your thoughts on this, people. I'm presuming the consensus here is going to be disappointment, but perhaps there's some people out there who think Bermaine Stiverne genuinely would have beaten Wilder the first time out if he hadn't been dehydrated. Perhaps there's people out there picking Stiverne to score the upset here. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you agree or disagree? You know, I'm just unbelievably frustrated that this is the next fight. Let me know your take on this matchup. If you've enjoyed the video, please hit the thumbs up button. As always, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe.